See, when I grew up on that hog and dairy farm in southern Minnesota, I was the youngest of 4 sons, no sisters. And I grew up in a position-centered family, not a person-centered family where everyone would have an equal say or an equal vote. There was a true hierarchy in the family where my dad had the most authority, then my mom, and then it went from oldest to youngest, and I was the youngest. So what would happen around the dining room table is my dad would say something, then my mom would say something, then Cabot, Kelly, Corey, and then they changed the subject. And I always had a terrible time getting into the conversation, but in 4-H, I could get up in front of a club once a month and give a 5 or 10-minute speech without interruption, and I really haven't stopped since. Then I went to school at Mankato State, became a college dropout. I left college after my junior year when that little manufacturing company came up for sale in my hometown. And the reason the business was for sale is because the gentleman that had started the company in 1972 had already suffered a massive heart attack by 1983, so it looked like something I should get involved with. So I negotiated at his bedside and ended up buying his company. So I was the youngest employee of 27 employees. I had no technical expertise. I was a chief executive officer and $450,000 in debt. Really getting places quickly. That was a lot of money back in '83. It's still a lot of money today. But I had a business mentor that told me, Kit, if you owe the bank $50,000, you're in trouble. If you owe the bank $500,000, they're in trouble. So be careful when you pick your mentors. But things turned out just fine. The business did grow to 3 companies. Left those companies back in 1989 to do this, to give seminars and workshops. All the years we were growing those companies, we'd run to Mankato, Sioux Falls, Spencer, Iowa, anywhere Career Track, Dale Carnegie, or Skill Path were offering seminars. And we found that we could go there for a few hours and learn some information we could apply for a few years. And that's the type of information I want to share with you today, information that will work if you put it to work, information, frankly, that's backed up from here until next week with research you can trust. The information I'm going to share with you, it's not something that came to me in a dream in the middle of the night. But I just want to forewarn you, I'm going to make a lot of suggestions. I'm not necessarily going to give you advice. I tend not to run around giving people advice. Main reason I'm not going to give you advice, frankly, is because Socrates was a man who went around giving people good advice, and I understand they poisoned him. So, so this morning I'm going to make a lot of suggestions, but you pick and choose the strategies you feel most comfortable with, because they'll all work if we put them to work. So let's go ahead and get to work. First thing we're going to see on the slide is something called the communication model. So I'm going to draw a little diagram here so you can kind of see the impact we have every time we interact with the people we work with. So I'm going to draw a diagram and circle some of these words. I'm going to have the word self over here on the left side and other party on the right side. And the reason I say other party is because I think working together should be fun. I'm the only person that thinks that's funny, but I keep saying it because I think it's going to catch on. Anyway, we have certain thoughts and feelings, we have rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. We pack all that information into words, and we send messages over to the other party. And people think about what it is that we've said. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they disagree, sometimes they don't understand, but they always provide us something magical in communication called feedback. So the good news is in communication, there's no such thing as failure. Just feedback. I thought I had you there for a second. Seems pretty simple. Doesn't look like we could get into much trouble with this thing. Hard to believe I could drag out a presentation talking about this. But there's a problem with the communication model. One of the problems is this arrow tip right here. I'd like you to imagine you're literally standing on top of that left circle, shooting arrows up and over and landing them on top of the right circle. First time we see each other in the morning, see each other in the hallway, see each other at lunch, see each other in the community over the weekend. But every time we interact with the people we work with, we're sending messages to them by arrow. Now, some of those messages and arrows attract people to us and our ideas. Some of those messages and arrows simply drive people away. That's this. This is February 14th. What's the big deal about February 14th? Valentine's Day, that's right. And there's a little fella running around shooting arrows at people, and who is that? Cupid, And Cupid would be sending messages of love. Oh, how's it feeling to get hit by one of those Cupid's arrows? Feels pretty good. Somebody says, I love you, I care about you, be mine. When those messages, those arrows pierce our heart, they feel pretty good. But how many of you know or seen or maybe been the victim of a teenager? Anybody had some of those of your own in your house? Do they always send Cupid's arrows to their parents? No, enemy arrows, poisonous darts. They'll say things like, why of all the people in the world do you have to meet my family? Or drop me off of the corner. I don't want my friends to see you. You embarrass me. And when those messages, those arrows pierce our heart, they kind of sting and they kind of hurt. And the bottom line in communication is every time we interact with the people we work with, we're either attracting them to us and our ideas or we're driving them away. There's nothing in between. People either like you or they don't. People either trust you or they don't. People either do what you ask or they just won't. So we have a tremendous responsibility how we package that message to keep attracting people to us in our organization, otherwise we're going to drive them away. So what we have to do is make sure before we start shooting these arrows around or shooting our mouth off at work, we're prepared to start these relationships out most effectively on a daily basis. Now the best book I ever read was a book called Reaching Out, Interpersonal Effectiveness and Self-Actualization, written by Dr. David W. Johnson, and on a single page he had this list called the 6 Criteria of Personal Credibility. The 6 things we need to put in place to start these work relationships out most effectively. Now, they're in no particular order. This is just the order I remember them, the easiest, but according to his research, if you're lacking in any one of these qualities, you're lacking credibility. Take a look at that first one. Consistently appear warm and friendly. Let's say we popped out of our chairs and we hustled back here to the back of the room, and all we did for the next few minutes is look out that double door into the hallway and watch people walk by, and all we're going to do is observe them to determine whether or not they appear warm and friendly. Of course, nobody's walking by right now, but imagine there were people walking by and we go, no, no, ooh, no. Hey, there's one. There's another one. How can we tell? What gives those people away that they appear warm and friendly? Yeah, they have a pleasant look on their face, and they might even be smiling of all things, huh? And we're all standing there looking out that door. What do they do when they walk by? Look in, make eye contact rather than avoid it. If they recognize you, what would they do? Psst, they whisper away. What's the out-of-pocket expense of appearing warm and friendly? Nothing. It's free. I have no idea what it costs as if we're not. It's one of the 6 criteria of being credible as a human being. We can go to work on that one right away. Key word is consistently. Because I don't know if you've ever worked with difficult people. But let's say this week you go back to work tomorrow and you're all warm and friendly. What do difficult people think? What do you want? Huh? What are you up to? Did you go to one of those motivational speakers or something? Well, let's say you have been consistently warm and friendly. One day you go to work next week straight to task, no friendly chit-chat with anybody. What do difficult people think now? What a grump. What a grouch. I bet they had a fight with their spouse. I bet they're a doggone teenager. They'll just make it up. So the key is to be consistently warm and friendly. I'm not saying you walk in every day high-fiving, backslapping, saying how great it is to work together every day, but nobody worries who showed up today, the happy person or the unhappy person. And then express your intentions and motives. Tell people I'll call you at 10 o'clock, I'll stop by at 3 o'clock. Now, people don't judge us on our intentions and motives. We judge ourselves on our intentions and motives, but everybody else judges us on our follow-through. Do we call back? Do we show up? Would they be standing by the desks knowing you're going to call at 10 o'clock? Standing by the desks knowing you're going to stop by at 3 o'clock or not? Now, those first 3 create warm fuzzies in our relationships, but these are work relationships, so we need to be the other 3 things too. Information source. Knowing knowable information, what's pin, pasted, posted on the wall, comes with the job. If your job's redesigned, they provide you the training to become competent again. Maybe what qualified you for the job in the first place. Then the second level of that is to develop relevant expertise, that in certain areas of what you do, people seek you out for the answers rather than wasting their time talking to anybody else. Now, Brian mentioned earlier this thing about how many books people read. Well, there's the American Booksellers, and a little college in California named Berkeley did a study of this country's workforce. This is what they found. 68% of the adults currently employed in this country have not read another book in its entirety since high school. Less than 25% of the adults currently employed in this country have even been in a bookstore or in a library in the last 5 years. And I don't even want to imagine what they're downloading off the internet. For you to be accused of having or recognized as having relevant expertise, you have 3 years experience, because the average turnover of the country is 2.5 years, half your competition's gone, and you've read 3 books specifically about what it is that you do because nobody else is reading. How long would it take to read 3 books? 3 weeks? 3 months? Hey, if it's a new job, live it up, it can take 3 years. We have the finest library system in the world. Any resource you request or require by law to order for you, it's free. It's free. This is when I feel a little bit uncomfortable about that seminar I deliver the most often, STP, Stress, Time, and Procrastination Management. Out of the 3,000 or so presentations I've delivered over the last 20 years, I've delivered that presentation more than 600 times. What a joke. I mean, really, what a joke. You went down to the local library and asked for 3 books on stress management, they'd give them to you. You go ahead and read 3 books, pick out 15 physical remedies, 15 psychological strategies, apply them in your life for 3 years. Wouldn't you know more about stress management than anybody else you live with or work with? Next time the people you're working with are talking about all the stress and anxiety and you're sitting there just as calm and relaxed as can be, somebody's going to look at you and say, "What's wrong with you? Don't you feel the pressure and stress?" And you sit back and say, "I've read some books on stress management. I have a dozen techniques I use throughout the day to manage the stress." Your co-workers will look at you and think, "What? You've read books on stress management? Let me see that book." You know why they'll say, "Let me see that book"? Because they're not going to read that book. It's like when you have a friend with a bad attitude, you give them that book, The Power of Positive Thinking. They take a look at that book and whip it back at you and say, "What good would that do?" But the next time they're under stress, they'll find you, track you down, and say, "I got some of those stress management techniques, can't take it anymore." And then the last on this list is dynamism. And dynamism is natural enthusiasm. Dynamism isn't actually appears you enjoy your job. Dynamism isn't that you're doing calisthenics and jumping jacks in between phone calls or meetings, but dynamism is when you walk in a room, the lights get a little bit brighter rather than darker. When you come to work, people are happy to see you rather than resent the fact you showed up again today. And they're all free. I have a question for you. It's not a trick question. It's a mathematical equation. I'm going to say it twice. Careful with your answer. What's 3 times 3? Careful now. What's 3 times 3? Go ahead. 9. Thank you. The reason I'm so careful about that is not too long ago I had somebody shout out 6, and man, that's hard to respond to. So 9's a great answer. What's 5 times 5? 25. You're awfully good at this. What's 6,842 times 3,875? That's a lot. Now, if I gave you those numbers again and you all wrote them down, you could all give me the answer, couldn't you? Why? Because you know the formula. I bet 49 years on this. That's the formula. Those 6 criteria: personal credibility, 3 times 3, 5 times 5. Notice, over the last 28 years, it's also 6,842 times 3,875. You take a look at somebody that's suffering or stumbling in their career right now, 1, maybe 2 of those missing, and if they could just put that in place, you know, it'd be a lot easier for them and a lot easier for us having to work with them, and they're all free. But it's all in how people perceive you. Now, in a book called Understanding Human Communication, they claim there's 6 perceptions going on between each and every one of us. Who I think I am, who I believe you think I am, then really who you think I am. Then from your side of the relationship, who you think you are, who you believe I think you are, and really who I think you are. So there's 6 perceptions going on between each and every one of us. There must be about 80 of us in the room. That's 480 perceptions going on at the same time, trying to figure out, you buying into this, going to make that adjustment. A lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to perception. But that's what gives us a chance to create a climate or culture where we work, or recreate it just in how we communicate with each other. Now, in a great book called Secrets of Successful Speakers, claims half the impact in how you perceive me occurred in the first 5 minutes of our time together. Half the impact. So, how'd you perceive me in the first 5 minutes? Jacket unbuttoned, hand in my pocket, saying a few silly things. This is where we have the lively interaction between the speaker and the participants. How'd you perceive me in the first 5 minutes? Together? Okay. Anything else? That's a good one. Are there any more? How'd you perceive me in the first 5 minutes? Energetic. Energetic. Confident. Confident. Wow, we can keep going with these. Let's say I started my jacket button and I said, "Good morning, my name is Kit Welchlin. Today I'll be sharing with you some strategies and techniques that will work if you put them to work." Now how do you perceive me? Stiff? Opinionated? If I want opinions, I'll tell you mine. I love saying that. It's kind of naughty, but I love saying that. So I think, well, that jacket's kind of formal, looks kind of sloppy unbuttoned, so I think maybe I'll do instead. Yeah, I will. Instead of putting on that jacket, I'm just going to go ahead and put on the sweater. So instead I start by saying, "Good morning, my name is Kit Welchlin, and today I'll be sharing with you some strategies and techniques that will work if you put them to work." Now how do you perceive me? Mr. Rogers, going to be some real hard-hitting information, huh? You're going to be afraid I'm going to move into your neighborhood. But it instantly changes the way you perceive me. And I'm not kidding, take a look at this. It may take people as little as 100 milliseconds, a tenth of a second, to determine whether or not a person is attractive, trustworthy, competent, and likable. A tenth of a second. That's less time, according to Princeton University, than it takes to form a rational thought. I'll tell you what, you take a look at that list. If it took 10 years to be accused of that, it'd be worth it.